All right, so far we have covered strengthened questions, supported questions, must be true, conclusion, disagree, and reasoning. And based on how we did on those couple review questions that were all level 4 and 5, it sounds like people are really understanding and doing well with them. Out of all of these questions in the chat, I want everybody to put, out of the ones that are starred, which one is most difficult for you? And after you put it in there, I want you to think about, wait, Kamani, not the ones that are starred, the ones that we've gone over. Assumption. Hopefully those are the most difficult because we haven't gone over those yet.
Okay.
Now, so the ones that we've gone over, I want you to also think about, why are these the most difficult for you? So think about that. Because it's important that we actually know why the question that we struggle with is something that we struggle with. So a lot of people are saying strengthen. So everyone take a minute and think about it. I'm going to have people share so we can see if we have some common themes here. All right. I don't believe in principal questions, Cora. So, okay, so people that said strengthening, why is strengthening the most difficult question for you? I like what Gaia said. She said because the answer choices bring in new information, and she struggles whenever it doesn't match what her prediction is. Why else do you struggle with strengthened questions? Katie says similar. She needs to be open to making better predictions and be open to more predictions. Mel and Trish, are these for both strengthens? You get stuck between two?
Oh, wow, we're talking the same thing.
No, it's awesome. No, this is showing common themes. I mean, are these on strengthened questions?
Yes.
So how can we get better at strengthened questions when we narrow it down between two? What are some tips that we can use?
I don't know. I wouldn't get them wrong.
Yeah, I think I get one. I think that was a strengthening questions about our homework that was about fourth graders. I don't know if anybody remember that one. And I was between, like, they was like, which one strengthens? I think fourth graders was to write, and they write more accurately or something like that, or something.
Okay.
And do you remember that one?
Mhm.
And I was between, I think, like A and C, and I was just like, I stayed there for like 2 to 3 minutes, like, oh my God, I think it's A. And I was like, no, I think it's C, because they, in a sense, they both strengthen it, because almost like they practice to get more accurate, and the other was like, they get accurate over time, or greatly over time. And I was just like, I was so stuck. I was like, I don't know. But then I end up picking the right answer, doing like, after my 3 minutes.
Whenever we get down to two answer choices and we're struggling between two, what is it really important that we do?
I tried picking out strong words, but I still guess I didn't do the right thing.
Yeah.
So picking out strong words, if we're really narrowing it down between two, what do we need to do?
Figure out what's different about them, like really pinpoint what is the difference between the two.
Yes, and before we do that step, revisit the conclusion. Ask yourself what the conclusion is. Ask yourself what the support for that is, and which one helped close that gap. Really focus on, what is the conclusion trying to actually prove?
Isn't it cool where we've talked about bridging?
Yes, really closing that gap.
Derek, I know you're being quiet, but actually Derek's really good at bridging. Like going back and saying like what the conclusion and the premise and how you can bridge the two together. And that's really helpful with narrowing down to which of the two is actually stronger. Because that's my problem half the time, is that I can narrow it down to the two, but then trying to determine which one is stronger of the two, because they both can technically be right.
Right. And we have to ask ourselves, what is our, like you said, bridging, what is our support? And really just narrow in on that conclusion. Are we trying to prove that the evidence is valid? Are we trying to prove that something is better than the other? Like, what part of it are we trying to get to? Oh, and then role questions. Why do we struggle with role questions or reasoning? Role and reasoning are the same. Derek, why do you think you struggle with those?
Because there's so many intermediate conclusions, and they hide where it's supposed to be. So that can be tricky at times.
Hide, what do you mean by hide?
Well, they can either put it the first part of the premise in the middle. They can add an intermediate and then a sub conclusion to that, and then reintroduce a different premise to a different conclusion. And then you have to try to figure it all out.
And then Cora, what do you said reasoning as well, right? Why are reasoning hard for you?
So I can traditionally figure out if it's a premise or if it's support for a conclusion. It's when you get down to answers that are all saying, or at least 2 or 3 are saying it's a conclusion, but then it's all the rest that follows that answer choice that will normally slow me down as far as, I don't know, it'll be weird stuff that follows the conclusion or whatever, I know what it is. And I think that's where it gets difficult.
So what can we do on reasoning questions to get better at them?
Do more.
Do more, right? Well, yeah, but it's more than just doing more. What do we really have to focus on? So in our review,
I always try to focus on like highlighting while I'm reading, I highlight the conclusion and what's the support for that conclusion.
Okay, so there's 2 things that we really need to do on these questions. It's one, how we worked on that last question where we found the conclusion, we found the sentence, and really asking ourselves, how does the author get to that conclusion and what role does the sentence they're asking us play? So really forcing us to do that. But the second thing is in our blind review, go through each of these answer choices and try to, in your blind review, so not in your time. So even if you crossed it off, so you're narrowing it down to 3 and you felt like you take a long time, go in and fill in, like, so it is a premise offered in support. So if it was this, what would that look like? And really break down all of these answer choices. So if there's 2 role questions on a time section, really spend a lot of time just like how you went on a flaw question, try to fill that. Does that make sense? Try to fill them in.
Mm-hmm. And here's the other thing too, and I don't know if it's just me. So like these seem, I don't know if it's just because they're in the 40s and the 50s. But when I've tried in my past to do into the 80s, like 81, 82, and all the way up to 89, those get more difficult, right? This to me, I was able to pick it out quick and move on.
When was the last time you did something in the 80s?
I try to practice it. So every couple of weeks I'll do something in the 80s.
So
because I know that the 80s are.
What is the flaw in Cora's argument?
Cora needs to redo something in the 80s now that she's a star.
Exactly.
And get a 180.
Get a 180.
But it does seem like everything in the 80s, it seems like they are more difficult. And I don't know if that's just because the test takers, or not test, the writers, that's after the loophole got published and they started taking out those keywords and a lot of.
That wouldn't be anything to do with reasoning. I would argue that reasoning questions haven't gotten harder.
Okay.
But I think other ones have. I'm going to send you some 80s and I want to see how you do on them.
Okay, because I mean, like this one, I was able to pick it out really quick, where there's been other ones that I've done and it took me forever, or I got it wrong.
We'll look into this.
Okay.